Good girl. Okay, I'm back, and it's a new day. I've had time to process all my emotions, and I read some more today, and it was a much more cheerful part of the book. I think I read about 4 chapters so far. I may read some more, but I'm going to go ahead and record some comments about what I've read. So I am loving this book, and there's a conversation in chapter 24 that so reminds me of Alan again. It's Ove, and I'm not 100% sure how to say her name. I'm going to say Parvane. I think I say Parvane in my head. Anybody who specializes in the pronunciation of like Persian / Farsi, I think is the language, so Persian names. I think that's correct, but please inform me. I would love to learn. One, how to say if Persian names is the correct thing to say, and secondly, how to say it. Parvane is what I'm going to go with for now. But anyway, she and Ove are having a conversation, and it's not even 9 o'clock yet, but I'm tired. Okay. She says, I thought you could give me some driving lessons. Ove looks so confused that he even forgets to get upset. So in other words, you don't have a driver's license. She says, no. So it wasn't a joke? No. Did you lose your license? No, I never had one. Ove's brain seems to need a good few moments to process this information, which to him is utterly beyond belief. What's your job? He asks. What's that got to do with it? She replies. Surely it's got everything to do with it. I'm a real estate agent. Ove nods. And no driver's license. Nope. No, she doesn't say nope. No. Ove shakes his head grimly, as if this is the very pinnacle of being a human being who doesn't take responsibility for anything. Parvane smiles that little teasing smile of hers again, scrunches up the empty french fries bag, and opens the door. Look at it this way, Ove. Do you really want anyone else to teach me to drive in the residential area? She gets out of the car and goes to the trash can. Ove doesn't answer. He just snorts. That whole exchange, oh my gosh. Just the utter disbelief and not being able to understand something makes me think of Alan. Because there are times that just people, the way of other human beings, will just completely catch him off guard. And he's got to pursue that line of questioning. And they've already had this conversation. That thing too, they've already had this conversation. Oh my goodness. They've already talked about this, and he still is in such shock that it's possible for an adult human being to not have a driver's license. It just cracks me up. And then there was a very touching moment between the two of them, just a little bit farther down, where she gives him the picture that her youngest daughter drew for him. And she's like, that's Jimmy, that's the cat, that's Patrick, and me, and that's you, explains Parvane. When she says that last bit, she points at a figure in the middle of the drawing. Everything else on the paper is drawn in black, but the figure in the middle is a veritable explosion of color, a riot of yellow and red and blue and green and orange and purple. You're the funniest thing she knows. That's why she always draws you in color, says Parvane. And that harkens back to the whole, he sees things in black and white, but she is color, all the color he has. But this is evidence that his perception is wrong, that's not how everybody sees him. That's not how this little girl sees him. She sees him as full of color, the funniest thing that she knows. And that's beautiful. And then, at the end of that section, he contemplates suicide again. He's looking at he's still got it all set up to use the exhaust fumes to kill himself. But then he looks at the cat and he turns off the engine. And I think that that's why Parvane insisted that he take the cat, because she saw that in his garage. And I think she processed, because she barged in on him the first time. She knows that he's suffering and lonely. And I think she made him take the cat to have a reason to live. I think she knows what she's doing. I also love how blunt Ove is. Like in the next chapter when he sees his friend Rune, or Rune, I think it's just Rune, but again, I am happy to be corrected on pronunciation if anybody knows for a fact. But Ove sees him, it's like, you look old. Just that like bluntness. Alan would totally say that. He has told me since having Atticus, he's like, you look rough. And I do, it's so true. And he doesn't mean it in a mean way. He's just honest. There were some things in chapter 26 that I just found really interesting. So the first one was he gets a letter that it's addressed in handwriting, but he thinks it's an advertising trick. And it's like, they really actually do that. But I love this line, to make one think it's a letter from a real person, and then one opens it and in a flash one has been subjected to marketing. That just was the funniest thing to me. And I love this chapter because in this chapter he's starting to initiate helping people. So in the previous chapters, people have sought him for help, and Parvane in particular has put him in position. You know, she kind of voluntold him to fix the radiators for Anita and Rune, and then she, sorry if you can hear one of my cats making a bunch of noise. Are you done? It was Gus. Gus is the culprit. Our laundry's also going, so there's lots of background noise. Whatever. This is scrappy. We've already established that. But anyway, in previous chapters, he's basically been forced to help people, right? He's been roped into being the chauffeur for his neighbor who can't drive, and he's been forced to take this cat. People have barged into his house. He has, I guess the man on the train tracks, nobody forced him to, but also nobody else was taking any action. I love that he just like sighed, like, and then did what he had to do. He's so put upon. But this is the first chapter where he's initiating helping people. So the young man who wants to fix the bike for his girlfriend, who's not his girlfriend yet, but he wants her to be his girlfriend, so he's calling her his girlfriend, whatever. Ove initiates, hey, come back later, bring your tools, we'll work on the bike. I'll show you how to fix it. And then at the end of this chapter, he shows up at his neighbor's house, at Parvane's house, and initiates, hey, we'll have a driving lesson. I'll pick you up in 2 hours. So it just feels like a turning point in the book to me. Side note, this next chapter was fascinating to me. Just all the driving stuff. The fact that they have a separate driver's license for people that drive automatic cars versus manual cars. I was like, whoa, that's actually kind of genius, because as far as I know, we don't have that in the US. As far as I know, the license that I have means I can drive any regular car that's not like a semi-truck or a school bus or, you know, one of those specialized vehicles. It seems like a good idea. But I also love this line. I forgot to highlight this. But she almost hits this car, right? And while he's trying to teach her, she's like, what do I do now? Reverse. You put it in reverse. You know, he's kind of walking her through it. She's like, I almost smashed into that car. Ove peers over the edge of the hood, and then suddenly a sort of calm comes over his face. He turns and nods at her, very matter of fact. Doesn't matter. It's a Volvo. That was just so funny to me. I forgot to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it right now. That's the kind of stuff that makes me like cackle while I'm reading this. And Alan will be like, what's so funny? And I don't want to tell him because I don't want to spoil a bunch of things. All right, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about tonight. But I found the end of chapter 27, so touching because, and also this feels like an Alan moment to me. Like Alan with his students, because he is kind of like a tough love, you know, he's not like, he doesn't act like a big warm teddy bear around them, but he does deeply care about them. And this pep talk that Ove gives Parvane is my favorite. You listen to me, says Ove calmly while he carefully closes the door. You've given birth to 2 children, and quite soon you'll be squeezing out a 3rd. You've come here from a land far away, and most likely you've fled war and persecution and all sorts of other nonsense. You've learned a new language and got yourself an education, and you're holding together a family of obvious incompetence. And I'll be darned, that's not what it says, but I'll be darned if I've seen you afraid of a single bloody thing in this world before now. Ove rivets his eyes into her. Parvane is still agape. Ove points imperiously at the pedals under her feet. I'm not asking for brain surgery. I'm asking you to drive a car. It's got an accelerator, a brake, and a clutch. Some of the greatest twits in world history have sorted out how it works, and you will as well. And then he utters 7 words, which Parvane will always remember as the loveliest compliment he'll ever give her. Because you are not a complete twit. So just that pep talk, it's still not like warm and fuzzy. It's not over the top. It's not this like hand-holding, sugar-coated thing. He's stating facts that she can hear and really believe because they're true. He's reminding her of all the things that she's done, and he's telling her comparatively, this is nothing. You've got this. I believe in you. You should believe in you. When Alan's students really are struggling, he'll show up and he'll give them this kind of pep talk, and they will cling to those lovely compliments, just like Parvane does, where the things that he says, even though they're not over the top and sugar-coated and warm and fuzzy, because they know that he's 100% authentic and that those things don't come lightly, they're that much more meaningful. Anyway, so that just felt like an Alan moment to me. So I may cozy up and read some more. And you know what? I may actually just let this film so I actually have a chance to do more of a traditional reading vlog where it's in real time. So I may read a chapter because I do need to get ready for bed here soon. So here we go. They were never quite in agreement when it came to words and their meanings. That sounds familiar. This is interesting. Ove and Rune are sort of trying to one-up each other with their home improvement projects. But it's right after Sonia's accident and the loss of their child. And Rune builds a swimming pool. That was no bloody swimming pool, Ove raged to Sonia. It was a little splash pool for Rune and Anita's newborn urchin. That was all it was. That feels like envy coming from a place of hurt. And that feels like that could be more the root of their falling out, is just the pain of seeing they'd been pregnant. The families had been expecting at the same time. And to see one family and be constantly reminded of what you should have, like what you expected to have, what you expected your life to be like. I could see that creating a pretty deep rift. This bit about Rune and Anita's son is so sad to me. At the same time, it also makes me think he sounds like one of the main characters of a Hallmark movie. He's like the grumpy city boy who comes home and finds love. Kind of thing. Yeah. Rune never said anything about it, but to anyone who had known him a long time, it was as if he shrank a couple of inches in the years that followed, as if he sort of crumpled with a deep sigh and never really breathed properly again. That's so sad. This is just funny. A bit into the noughties, not Noughties. Instead of like 80s, 90s, the noughties, is that like the early 2000s? That's so funny to me. I've never heard that before. I wonder if that's a British thing. Revisiting the cars that they bought and why they bought them is really interesting because I don't know anything about these makes and models of cars, so I did not even think to look them up and know that, that Ove bought a Saab 95 so he'd have space for Sonia's wheelchair. That same year, Rune bought a Volvo 245 to have space for a stroller, etc. So this little explanation lends a lot of power to something that earlier just seemed kind of random in many ways. That maybe their sorrow over children that never came should have brought the two men closer. But sorrow is unreliable in that way. When people don't share it, there's a good chance that it will drive them apart instead. Maybe Ove never forgave Rune for having a son who he could not even get along with. Maybe Rune never forgave Ove for not being able to forgive him for it. Maybe neither of them forgave themselves for not being able to give the women they loved more than anything what they wanted more than anything. Ugh. Rune and Anita's lad grew up and cleared out of home as soon as he got the chance, and Rune went and bought a sporty BMW, one of those cars that only has space for two people and a handbag, because now it was only him and Anita, as he told Sonia when they met in the parking area. And one can't drive a Volvo all of one's life, he said, with an attempt at a half-hearted smile. She could hear that he was trying to swallow his tears, and that was the moment when Ove realized that a part of Rune had given up forever. And for that, maybe neither Ove nor Rune forgave him. It's so interesting, the car thing coming back. The BMW, you read about it the whole book, and now hearing the significance of it. Like, you think it's just a petty thing, and that it's just about loyalty, but it's about a lot more than that. But I'm sure that's not anything Ove could ever articulate. I think that's true for a lot of people. Well, I'll pick back up tomorrow. I have a sleeping baby in my arms, so I'm going to try to talk gently. But I've read another like 6 or 7 chapters, and I need to get on here and share some thoughts before I keep going. Oh, I should say, I listened to a snippet of the audiobook, which I should have done a long time ago, because now I know how to say his name. I've been saying it wrong the whole time. It's Uwe. And I didn't listen long enough to find out how to say the neighbor's name, so I'm going to keep saying Pravane, but I need to I need to listen and figure that out. I love how Uwe is slowly making friends, and just the community building portion of this book where Uwe's getting to know his neighbors, and it's just very focused on this little micro community. It actually reminds me of My grandmother told me to tell you she's sorry, which basically all features all of these families and individuals that live in the same apartment building. So I want to read more of Bachman's work to see if that's like a kind of theme that he deals with in a lot of his work, because I know Beartown's about like a town. I think Britt Marie Was Here is like a sequel sort of to My Grandmother Told Me to Tell You She Was Sorry, just like a spin-off maybe. I don't know how to say it, but anyway, just an interesting theme. So he's starting to make or like build relationships with these people, and I love the interaction where Pravani realizes why they drove into town, where she's like, so me and Uwe drove all this way just to give you a bike so you can mend it for a girl. And then, you know, the boy nods. She pats Uwe on the arm. You know, Uwe, sometimes one almost suspects you have a heart. That just sounds like something people would say to Alan. I also love the interaction about, you know, where the cafe owner asks Uwe, the cat, is that your cat? And he's like, no, not so much because he wants to point out that it isn't his cat, but because he wants to clarify that it's no one's cat. This is an independent cat. Anyway, I also, the whole interaction with Mirsad? I'm not, Mirsad? I'm not sure how to say his name, but the son of the cafe owner, who's Adrian's boss, where Uwe's like not being politically correct at all. He like is genuinely confused about why he can't say what he's saying. It's just so funny to me because, again, not that specific scenario. There are definitely social norms about what is like acceptable and not, that does not make sense to Ellen at all. So that just reminds me, or this interaction reminds me a little bit of Alan in that regard. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Keep sleeping peacefully, little man. In chapter 30, when he's apologizing to Sonia for not being able to follow her as he planned, that's sad. And then just like the description of how he dealt with the grief, like what their routine used to be, and then how that when that routine was like ripped away from him, how he like didn't know what to do. It's sad. But there is something else in here that reminded me of Alan. When Sonia says, other wives get annoyed because their husbands don't notice when they have their hair cut. When I have a haircut, my husband is annoyed with me for days because I don't look the same. Sonia used to say, oh my gosh. So about like a year and a half ago, I used to have really long hair, and I was getting frustrated with it because it was really hard to take care of. Okay, maybe I need some afternoon coffee. I keep yawning. Anyway, hair was really long, and I was talking about for months how I wanted to cut it. So Alan finally made an appointment for me, which was really sweet actually, because he figured out I just wasn't gonna do it for myself, but I really wanted to. So he makes an appointment for me. I go and get my hair cut, and I tried to prepare him for how short I wanted it. And he was, you know, not very comfortable with the idea, but he knew it's what I wanted to do. So he was like, you know, I'll get used to it kind of thing. Well, it ended up being even shorter than I wanted. And when I came home, I called him to warn him. And then when I came home, I noticed he was talking to me, but he wouldn't look at me. He was like looking down. And it's like, it was just so distracting to him that he couldn't carry on a conversation while looking at me. And it probably took maybe 2 or 3 days for him to get used to it. But it was funny because, you know, everybody in my life, like my mom and my sisters and friends at church, they were all like, oh my gosh, like it looks so good, I love it. And I remember Alan saying something along the lines of like, I'm sorry I can't react the right way. And I was like, what do you mean? There's not a right way to respond to someone's haircut. It makes sense that it might take a little bit of time for you to adjust, but you're being honest with me that you prefer the longer hair, but you still supported me in doing what I wanted to do because you're the one that made the appointment for me, and you're trying not to poo-poo on my dreams because you know I really like it. So you're just kind of keeping your opinion to yourself and out of respect. So that's perfectly the right way to respond. What are you talking about? Like, I don't want you to be fake and pretend and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Man. Anyway, it was just funny. That reminds me of him. Okay. I'm gonna try to record a couple more thoughts before my phone dies because I want to keep reading, but I have a theory that I want to share with you guys first before I read more. But I still have a couple comments because I read so many chapters ahead. So, chapter 31. When Uwe walks up to the neighbor's house and asks Parvane, is that useless husband of yours at home? Oh my gosh, that sounds like something Alan would say. Also, I wanted to comment in chapter 32. This is the first time that he refers to the letter of instructions that he's wearing, carrying around in his inside pocket for after it's his instructions for after he's committed suicide, like he is planning on. He refers to them as instructions for Parvane, and that's the first time that he's envisioning who specifically is going to care, I guess, when he's gone. It's not this nameless person anymore that he's going to be leaving behind. He has people that care for him, and he knows, he's starting to realize, I guess, that he will be leaving people behind just like he was left behind. Or he would be. I'm hoping that he lives to the end of this book. Okay, I just really liked this quote in chapter 33. Uwe has probably known all along what he has to do, but all people at root are time optimists. We always think there's enough time to do things with other people, time to say things to them, and then something happens, and then we stand there holding on to words like if. And if we all haven't experienced that, that's such a human thing. And then Bachman brings the quote back later on in the same chapter. Sometimes it's hard to explain why men suddenly do the things they do. And Uwe had probably known all along what he had to do, whom he had to help before he could die. But we are always optimists when it comes to time. We think there will be time to do things with other people and time to say things to them. Time to appeal. And this is him realizing that he can't just leave Rune and Anita behind. That he's got things he has to do. Oh my gosh, I cried in chapter 35. Okay, I think this is where I left off. Yes. Chapter 35. When Parvane sees the crib, and it's the crib that Uwe made for their child. And he pulled it out of the attic, and he's sprucing it up to give to his neighbors. And it's just really sweet to think that it's not going to be empty anymore. That there's actually going to be a baby in the crib. And that he found someone that he trusts to give it to. I don't know. I just found that very emotional. I thought it was really sweet.
And I don't know if she knows the story, but anyway. And then, another really good quote later in this chapter, Anita's talking to the social services people who are coming to take away Rune. She says, "What sort of love is it if you hand someone over when it gets difficult?" She cries, her voice shaking with sorrow. "Abandon someone when there's resistance. Tell me what sort of love that is." And that's about where I left off. I want to read more, but it suddenly occurred to me earlier on, Uwe makes a phone call and says, like, he hated having to do it, blah, 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 blah. And I was wondering if he called Rune and Anita's son. I don't know, but I was wondering. I don't know how he would have his number. But, you know, the question is, who's going to take care of Rune if Anita can't? And I don't know. I just could see him doing something like that. Calling the son and basically chewing him out and being like, you have to come back and take care of your dad. I could see him doing that. So, okay, I'm going to keep reading. I'll probably have to share further thoughts tomorrow, but I'll check in when I can.